Hearty welcome to the next edition of the VDMA CEO's Thought Leadership Series, and a proud privilege for me to welcome Mr. Kishore Jayaraman. Kishore is the President, Rolls-Royce India and South Asia. Prior to joining Rolls-Royce, Kishore held diverse leadership roles across markets at GE for 23 years, and his last assignment was as President and CEO of GE Energy South Asia. He has done his MS in Mechanical Engineering and has an MBA degree. Kishore serves on several boards and is at helm of industry committees and associations. A man much in demand, Kishore, when I see the number of webinars you are attending. So it's a pleasure for us to welcome you today. Thank you for joining us for this series of VDMA Thought Leadership Series, Kishore.
Thank you very much, Rajesh. It's a privilege to be here with you all. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Kishore. Yeah, Kishore, let's start with the present scenario. I think the COVID has really impacted global businesses. It's called the Black Swan of 2020. It came totally, people were unpredicted circumstances. Nobody saw it coming, and it has really hit us hard. And perhaps for the first time in history, you could say supply, demand, workforce, not only in a particular region, but globally have been impacted. So my first question to you, Kishore, is what has been the impact of COVID on Rolls-Royce in India and globally, Kishore?
Well, thanks, Rajesh. I know that these black swan events, kind of tend to happen over a period of time. We had, just going into the very immediate past, I think you would look at 9/11. That was a black swan. Nobody expected the World Trade Center to just collapse. The 2008 financial crisis, nobody expected that to happen. And it seems to be happening in different sectors, right? So this time around, the interesting phenomenon here is that, yes, it's a health crisis, pandemic, but then it kind of brought the world to its knees. Every country, every single citizen of the world has been impacted by it. And needless to say, look, Rolls-Royce, we have our share of pains because of the pandemic as well. There's some of the lessons I think as we are still going through this crisis, I think we keep learning every day about something that we should do better. And I think we did a very nice job of having some cash in our books so that we can, kind of tide through this crisis. I think cash is the key. And cash tends to become the king, right? I mean, for any company, what this crisis would teach us is that we should have a reserve of cash. When I first went to the US about, 30 years back, people told me there, look, you owe the company 2 weeks. Jack Welch said this, you owe the company 2 weeks and the company owes you 2 weeks. So everybody had to be prepared. You need to have some cash so that in case something goes wrong with the job, you need to have some money to sustain for a period of time. Right. And that lesson in a personal life, I think now also comes true in the professional life, wherein companies will have to look and shore up their balance sheets, make sure that they have cash available to tide through crises like this, right? And it's not going to be like this is the last black swan. I'm sure there will be many more black swans. Yes. People will recover from it. People will find an answer. But I think for companies, I think cash is king. That's one thing that I want to share with you. The other thing is, look, the aviation sector, we are in wide-body aircrafts. And so wide-body aircrafts is all international travel mostly. Yes, there are some domestic travel, both in the US, in China, and other big economies. But once the international travel starts, we believe that then things go back to normal for our civil aerospace business. But when you look at our defense business, when you look at our power systems business, we're doing pretty well there, right? Because the geopolitics has only strengthened around the world. When I say strengthened, it's not all positive, but then, the defense portfolios of countries and the need for countries to become secure from a defense point of view has only increased through this pandemic. And I think that gives us, a solid opportunity to participate in that sector. And in that sector, as far as India goes, I think India, we have formed joint ventures in India. We have been able to serve the forces from our services point of view. But what we want to do now is co-create products. We want to be at the front end where we are creating IP in India. And by creating IP in India, what we end up doing is we provide true Atmanirbhar. right? Okay. Because then you have the IP, then you're able to manufacture it, you're able to design, manufacture, create supply chains, export, everything becomes possible. And I think that is the space that I think in areas like defense, in healthcare, in digital, I think those are areas where we need to, as in India, look more and more into it. And Rolls-Royce wants to look more and more with India in that term, right? Okay. And in the civil aerospace business, India is primarily a narrow body market today. And so once they go to wide body market, I think then we will participate in the wide body market with the Indian airlines. But in India, every aircraft that comes into the country has a Rolls-Royce engine. But these are all multiple carriers like Lufthansa or Air France or British Airways or Virgin. So civil aerospace, I think, has got its little niche. Yes, we did face our share of problems because of the shutdown of the world. Defense, we have seen some good momentum, and I think as we go forward, it provides an opportunity to think differently. And power systems business has been very stable for us, and I think it's a business of reciprocating engines where we are able to provide power, uninterrupted power supply to data centers. We are looking at microgrid solutions. We are looking at what more we can do with the fast power boats, offshore petrol vehicles, aircraft carriers. So plenty of opportunity. I think the world has plenty of opportunity. Yes, the crisis is a setback, but I think when companies learn how to handle such setbacks and sustain, then I believe that at the end of the day, the light at the end of the tunnel is bright, and it's going to be beautiful out there.
Right. I think it's a very optimistic note and a very positive note we are starting the discussion, Kishore. Kishore, you also mentioned about the aeronautical industry, and the government also, in fact, has laid a lot of emphasis on the aeronautical industry. And in fact, there is an endeavor of the government to increase the size from 30,000 crores to 60,000 crores by 2024. And the aim is to be achieved through measures such as encouraging global aerospace industry to source components from India. Now, what I wanted to ask you, Kishore, is what is the readiness level of the suppliers in India? And can this work out to be a long-term strategy also for the suppliers from India?
Well, I think when we look at India, I don't think there's any shortage of capacity or capability, right? But the rules and regulations that apply to the automotive sector are not going to apply to the aerospace sector, right? And I think a clear understanding of the rules and regulations of how to participate, because a car can be stopped on the side of the road. We don't have such a parking lot up in the skies. So in that context, I think the need for procedures, processes, more than 6 Sigma, 7 Sigma, reliability, safety, etc., become very, very, very critical. And I think whoever wants to participate in this sector has to clearly understand what they're getting into. A lot of people come in there and say, I have done this before, so I should be able to do it for the aerospace sector. I don't think it's going to work that way. If we come with our eyes open and we are able to say that, look, this is what it's going to take. Yes, it's an adjacency to my existing business. And I want to use this opportunity to create an adjacency for my business, and I'm willing to invest in it. I think there are plenty of opportunities. So the government of India is definitely coming out with very good schemes, and they are looking at ways of creating the supply chain. But at the end of the day, it's not just a supply chain. It's got to be market driven in terms of revenues. It's got to be driven by servicing, which has got to be more localized. It's got to be driven by the tax regimes. It's got to be driven by many, many factors. And supply chain is one of those factors. So yes, supply chain seems very tangible for the Make in India initiative, but I think we can look at all different areas of the aerospace sector and the aviation sector. And I think it will be a really, really good opportunity for employment, for skills, for ecosystem development, and many, many more things.
Right. Kishore, I'm just losing your audio.
Is this better now?
Yeah. Now it's better now. Yeah.
I'm so sorry about it, Rajesh. It's just the communications have been a little bit spotty here.
Right. Yeah. Now I can hear you, Kishore. Right. Yeah. I think I am. Can you hear me, Kishore? Am I audible to you?
I can hear you. I can hear you clearly.
Right. So going forward, Kishore, when we talk about the Indian aerospace industry, we are talking mainly of related to defense production and manufacturing of, in fact, manufacturing of commercial vehicles has not really taken off in India. What we are doing is we are doing more the MROs, maintenance, repairs, and overall. So what is the reason, Kishore, that we have not been able to manufacture commercial aircrafts in India?
Well, always the question becomes one of, why do we want to manufacture something? If something works, why change it? Right? There are enough companies in the world that have made aircraft, and like Boeing, Airbus. Now Mitsubishi has gone into regional jets. You got Gulfstream. You got Cessna. You got many different manufacturers of aircraft. You got GE, Rolls-Royce, Pratt & Whitney, and a couple of others, Honda, a couple of others who make engines as well. Right. But in this sector again, it's a very high entry barrier. Right. And the need of the hour is what helped those countries. If you look at World War II and the need for the Germans to build all this technology and the need for the British to build the technologies, America to build the technologies, forced them to create that kind of an infrastructure for creating that. We didn't have that need. But when the need arises, we will also rise up to the occasion, right? And now when you don't have a need, the next question is, what is the best alternative for us to absorb the technologies? Right. Now, when you are absorbing the technologies, it has to have an end goal of what will you do with this technology, right? So we need aircrafts because we need to move people from point 1 to point A to point B. We need aircrafts because we need to move cargo from point A to point B. So when we have this need, we have to either acquire the aircraft. But if you say, I have to build the aircraft, the question one of how many aircrafts will you need? What is the business case in order to build it? Where are you going to get the technology from? So it starts a whole slew of questions. By the time of which it is answered, it becomes very hard. So in these kinds of situations, the only way things have worked is the government creates programs. So if the government of India were to create a program and say, I'm going to build a commercial aircraft engine from India, and let's say I'm going to collaborate with this couple of companies or a couple of countries. And then what happens is that you got the funding for the project. Like I said, we have the capability and the capacity in India. And I think we'll come up with a product that's globally competitive. And I think we'll come up with a product that is also at a cost point that is easily affordable for many people at the highest levels of safety and reliability and efficiencies. So I think, it is quite possible. It has always been a question of what is the need at the moment.
Right. Also, Kishore, when we look at, you had earlier mentioned about the manufacturing in India for components, aerospace components. If we look at generally our manufacturing industry, Kishore, we've never really made a mark in the global industry. India's share in export is a meager 1.7% in the global market of engineering products. Now we are talking also of, you also mentioned about Atmanirbhar Bharat, we are talking of the Honorable Prime Minister's call for vocal for local and to make India as a global hub. Now for this, we really would need to gear up for this, Kishore, if we have to reach certain global standards as well as if we have to make an impact in the global market. Of course, on one side is the endeavors of the MSME sector or the industry. But what I wanted to ask you, Kishore, is what can the government do to support the industry or to support the MSME sector to really, so that India can make a mark on the global platform? We've already done to some extent in the automotive industry, auto component industry. But I think in other industries we've been lacking. And let's look at aerospace industry. So what exactly do you feel the government can undertake to support the industry?
Yeah, I think, like I said, there are, I would say about 2 or 3 things that we can think about. Number one is, right? There should be a creation of programs so that there is research and development activity that happens in the sector to constantly keep the knowledge base moving forward, to keep the ability to produce or sort of design and create these products and services in India. That's one step where the government can help. Number 2 is that whenever we try to get companies to do something new, right? The companies are looking, basically private companies are going to look for profits. Right. And so they're going to say that I make this and I deliver this, what is my profitability equation? Right? Right. So in this regard, the question becomes one of materials, the cost of the materials, the taxes that is being provided to these companies. If we want to be global, then I think these companies will require, like in every sector, right? If you were to look at the solar industry, you were to look at the wind industry, you were to look at the coal thermal power generation industry, I think everywhere the government had to step in and figure out a way to incentivize people and also to provide, sort of, what should I say, foundations or platforms from which these companies can start to take off. At the end of the day, if you want to be global, first we should know how to make it. Next, we should know how to make it to compete. And the third point we have to look at is how do we differentiate ourselves from anybody else who's making it. Vietnam would make it, China would make it, Thailand would make it. So the question is that will come from India that is going to say that this is why I'm buying from India. Usually, people come to India and say, I want a cost arbitrage. It's a cheaper point. But now China is having the cost arbitrage advantage. But I think with the talent we have in India, I think we need to look at the value arbitrage. We can create efficiencies in the manufacturing process. We can figure out how to create efficiencies in the materials used. We have to apply ourselves to the research and development side of things. And I think we need to leverage our capability and talent. For that, we need to create an education system. We need to create skill system. We need to create tax reforms. We need to create infrastructure reforms. I think all these go into the pot. That's where the government plays a role. And I think, to be very honest with you, the current government is doing everything possible in every state. It is competitive and collaborative federalism. And I think that's fantastic because it puts the onus on the different states, and the states have to compete. And I'm seeing this. When I go out and I talk to people in different states, I'm seeing the state governments are pushing to bring manufacturing to them, to bring business to them, to create employment. I think it's working. But like everything else, it takes time. We're talking about the 1991 reforms after 30 years, saying how great a reform it was. And I can guarantee you, we're talking about the reforms that have been created over the last 5 years in the next 10 or 15 years, and say what great reforms these were. But it takes time. I think it just takes time, and we just have to keep moving the needle forward. That's going to be the key.
Right. So what you're saying, Kishore, is we are on the right path or right track, but only thing is that it will take time for these steps to be implemented.
Look, we are a 1.3 billion population country, which, across the spectrum, we have challenges that we have to overcome. Right. But then if you look at it and say with 1.3 billion people across the spectrum, we have opportunity. And I think when we look at the opportunities and the rate at which we are fulfilling, crises like this pandemic is going to increase the focus on the vaccines, the pharma sector, the self-reliance on that sector. Similarly, I don't want a crisis in the aerospace sector or the automotive sector, but I think every industry is seeing a crisis because of the shutdown that has happened. Right. And I think because of that, what is going to happen is there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be released. The pressure has to be released. The pressure will be released, and the pace at which we will change will only accelerate, because I think there was a little bit of a wake-up call that has happened over the last 6 months for private, public, government, anybody, you and me too, Rajesh. I think there's a wake-up call.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's right, Kishore. Yeah. Kishore, you mentioned a couple of times about the R&D. Now, what is the status? Actually, if you look at on an average, I think the industry benchmark is that almost 2.5% to 3% is spent on R&D. Certain countries like Germany or Japan, they're spending almost up to 4% on the R&D. India's spending on R&D is in fact less than 1%. So what is the level of the research and development work we are doing in India, Kishore? And how do you feel if we are going to have only limited spending on R&D? How can we really get that technological edge what we are looking at, Kishore?
I mean, it's a very good question. I would look at the percentage spend for a second, right? I'll park it for a second, because it's easy to compare with somebody else and say, okay, I want to spend 3%, I want to spend 4%.
Right.
But in India, if you look at it, especially defense sector, I think most of the R&D is done by the government labs,
Right.
And you look at aerospace sector, automotive sector, I don't see the academia participation. I don't see the industry participation, right? And I think in the UK, there was a wonderful model called as the catapult centers. And all these catapult centers did was encourage research and development in the manufacturing processes or in the materials or in various areas by bringing together the academia, the industry, and the government.
Right.
And the government was providing the incentives so that for a place like Sheffield, so there will be a catapult center, and then in the catapult center, it will be companies like Rolls-Royce that participate, Boeing, Airbus, and it is to solve common problems. And if the companies don't have a competitive sort of an advantage through the solutions that come through these catapult centers, then it doesn't matter who participates. So any company that competes with the other can also participate. And this is where the PhDs are, our people doing theses are going to work on, and each project can become a thesis. So you have institutions wanting to grab these projects, and the government provides the funding, right? And I think that model has to speed up in India. We need to leverage all the talent that we have in every different location. And I mean every different location. We also have our own challenges. If you look at a percentage, there's always a question of, do I give this research to agriculture? Do I give it to automotive? Do I give it to aerospace? And then it becomes another question of what's the need of the hour. We have the need of the hour in every space. So the key is to figure out how people will come with proposals, go to the government approves the proposals, provides them with the funding, they come up with a solution, and they look at how the solution is commercialized. At the end of the day, finding a solution becomes a research project if it cannot be commercialized. Right? So I know that there's a lot of conversation going on in the government of India corridors about commercialization of projects. Right? I've heard this specifically in relationship to defense projects. And I think in the civilian space as well, there should be a lot of projects that can be commercialized, and there can be a lot of capabilities that can be leveraged. That's the way I'll go about for R&D in India. Focus on it, find answers, publish the answers, communicate how much we have done in terms of R&D, not in terms of numbers, but in terms of products that have been coming out of the market and commercialized. We will see a sea change. Look, we got awards. We got awards from everywhere talking about HR excellence, operations excellence. So there should be some kind of an award done by some big jury event with a very high profile candidates who basically come out there and say that, look, these companies have done this in collaboration with this institutions supported by the government, the state or the center. I think that whole concept has to be developed, which is still in the infant stages for us.
Right. I think that's a very valid and relevant point, Kishore, what you've pointed out, because even in the engineering industry, we are seeing that link between industry, academia is somewhat missing in India. If we compare, for example, to Germany, where we find a very strong link, the academia or the institutions undertake projects which are funded by the industry R&D projects. And I think, as you correctly said, this is a step India needs to undertake. Kishore, talking about the talent pool in India, when we look at the aerospace industry, how would you rate the talent pool available in India?
Look, I mean, the talent pool is going to evolve based on the need, right? The example is that when I was finishing up my engineering college, right? At that point in time, working for companies like Infosys or TCS was really only meant for the computer science guys or the electrical engineers who were there, right? A mechanical engineer like me usually went off in a different path, right? But then they also were starting to absorb people. And then I looked at my next generation, so my cousins' kids and all this, they were basically studying to just go into these companies. They were preparing themselves, so they are programmers, they are analytical experts, they are logic experts. They are preparing themselves to go into this industry. Why? Because the industry has come out and it's emerged, and they all see there are jobs available there. So it's a chicken and egg story, right? I mean, if you have the talent waiting, but you don't have the industry, they're all going to have no jobs.
Right.
But if you have the industry evolving, you don't have the talent. So there is a little bit of a lockstep that happens, and we are always trying to figure out which one goes first, right? And the best answer, in my view, is to say that the industry will have to evolve. So when people start traveling more, there's more aircrafts. When there's more aircrafts, you have more people. Simple. Look, if you looked at 20 years back, there was only Jet Airways.
Right.
And then there were a few airlines which came, went bust, which came, went bust. But then you had now Indigo, you have SpiceJet, you have Vistara, and you need all the air crew, you need all the pilots, you need all the technicians. So the whole industry now has completely evolved.
Absolutely.
Right?
Right.
So I think that is, that will catch. Every industry will catch. Now, if pharma, because of this COVID pandemic, evolves, you will find people getting into health sciences more and more.
Right.
Right? And it's clear that the parents are guiding the kids, and the kids are also learning through the all digital social media, other places where they are able to find information. And so information is very, very easily available today. And so people will adapt very quickly. So the institutions have to provide the foundations for them to quickly learn and adapt and move. And people will change careers. It used to be, when I started my job, they said you will have 2 or 3 careers, right? And I think in today's day and age, people might have 5 or 6 careers.
Right.
If you're a real domain expert like a doctor, you probably will be a doctor.
Right.
But if you're an engineer, you might be an engineer, then you might become, in the engineering space, you might address different sectors, or
Right.
then you might become chief engineer, or you might become a management person, or you might become a consultant. So you'll kind of branch out, right? For all these branching outs, there are skills that need to be developed.
Right.
And those skills, ability to go grab those skills and learn these skills, as long as that is available, and we are doing a very good job today. To be honest, I mean, the amount of institutions we have, the amount of programs that come out, the next step in that direction is the quality of these programs.
Right.
When people come out with programs, the quality of these programs has to be very good. Colleges and institutions and universities should be held responsible for the capability that they give the students at the end of the program. And then if they come out with such high quality, they're going to demand that in the industry, they're able to use their high quality in order to generate a higher quality products and services. It is a positive spiral that will be created. And it starts at a very young age. It starts at the college level, university level, and that system, that culture, I think has to happen. And yes, these are all generational topics, right? These are not going to happen today or tomorrow by talking about it. But if you don't talk about it, and we don't take that little baby step in that direction for us to achieve something over the next 10, 15 years, we will look back after 10, 15 years and say, wish we had done it now.
Right. Right.
That's what I feel.
Right. No, thank you, Kishore. I think very insightful perspective from your side. And I also firmly believe, I think we need to get that practical aspect in our education system, because we have large number of educational institutes, but the quality has to improve. And I think one complaint of the industry always has been that the graduates are not ready for job. And I think that readiness level can only be increased when we include that practical training aspect also in our education system, Kishore.
Yeah, it is domain specific. The students come out of the universities and they have the curiosity, they have the commitment, and they have the capability that was given to them to learn quickly. Right. I think industries are willing to put in the money to train them, right? I mean, it's not like they want to train them, so they go for a 4-year college. It makes no sense to train them for 4 more years.
Right.
But they go to college and then they come back and they can train them within 3 months, 6 months, a year. I think a lot of industries are up to it, and a lot of companies will be up to it, because I think it is for their benefit to train them in the direction they want them to be in.
Right, right. Coming to my last question, Kishore, I think it's only in the last 5 or 6 months we were using the term VUCA very liberally before, but I think it's only in the last 5 or 6 months we've really felt the impact of the term VUCA, and when we look at the uncertainty factor, that has hit us all very hard. This is also a test of leadership, Kishore, in these challenging periods. So I would request you to share 2 or 3 tips from your side, what you feel how leaders should handle the present crisis, because we are facing multiple challenges on workforce front, challenges on business front, challenges on the environmental or the surroundings, what are in quite challenging conditions. So what would be your 2 or 3 tips, Kishore, which you would like to share for the benefit of the CEOs?
I think number one would be outcome focused. We need to know each and every one of our people, or at least my immediate team, I know what their deliverables are going to be.
Okay.
And so instead of saying whether you worked 8 hours a day, I would like to know what tasks have been completed and how have they actually resulted in us benefiting as a company, right? That's one. So I think outcome focused is number one priority. You don't have people sitting with you anymore. They're all in different locations. They're all working with different kind of other constraints, challenges, and priorities, right? So I think giving them the task and saying, look, you work in your hour and you kind of deliver to the task is the usual thing. If you're not able to do it as a task, it's still okay. But I think it should be at least something that will lead towards an outcome that's measurable. Otherwise, there'll be confusion. Now, the other thing is, I think the second most thing is that we have to be leaders with a lot of empathy. People these days are going through a lot. As much as everybody said when the office was there, they had to take the metro or the public transport or drive to work with the traffic, everybody used to say, you know, work from home should be given to us. Flexible work hours should be implemented. But when they are given now, I can tell you a lot of people are saying, when will the office open?
Right, absolutely.
You know, so it is, I think the reason is that there is a limit to what the human mind can kind of put up with on a very monotone basis. Right. And so people like change, people like to sort of see things, interact with people physically. So there is a lot of mental stress that happens when everybody's locked down, shut down. And so it is very important for us to realize that and have a lot of empathy in the way we deal with our people. So you should not give up on the outcome focus, but then the empathy should not be lost as well. Right. And the third most important thing to me is to be very logical and pragmatic about things, because yes, there are a lot of pressure points, right? You have pressure points from a cash point of view, you have pressure points from a revenues point of view, you have pressure points in terms of, you know, teams and bringing people together and digital formats, a new world. So there is a lot of pressure points, and you know, it's easy for any one of them to just go out of control. So to make sure that you're able to balance it, prioritize it, and manage it, right, is very important for the leaders. And the leaders should not lose themselves in the process, because they are also going through the same issues that the employees are going through. Absolutely. They're also going through the same issues everybody else is. They're also human. So at the end of the day, if they're able to realize that and say, I am also human, and are able to bring it back to some sort of a sensibility, you know, in a very logical, pragmatic way, they will find themselves in a better spot. I have to do this to myself quite frequently, where I have to rein myself in, take a little break of a couple, 3 hours or a day or so, and then go back, regroup myself and say that, okay, now I'm back into this, now let's think about this, right? And I think that constant self-awareness of limitations, of feeding back and talking about, are we achieving something as a company? Are we delivering value as a unit to all our stakeholders? This kind of a, you know, self-realization mechanism has to set in these times. And I think it's not just these times. When we come out of this pandemic, we are all reverting back to a new normal. I don't think these lessons can ever be forgotten, because I think they will continue to be with us for our, you know, sort of predictable horizon in the future, right? And I think that's what I would suggest.
Right. Thank you very much, Kishore. It was an absolute pleasure speaking to you, and thank you for sharing these insights and valuable tips. And on behalf of the German Engineering Federation, VDMA, wishing you and the team all the best in this period of crisis as we go ahead as a nation. I think the next few months are going to be very crucial for the Indian economy also. And we have to go, I think, step by step, as you correctly mentioned, and be prepared for the future also, because as you correctly put also, Kishore, things will change and things are going to be very dynamic in the future.
Absolutely, Rajesh. I really look forward to a bright future. I keep my optimism levels high, and it's always a pleasure to interact with people like you and organizations like VDMA. Thanks for the opportunity, Rajesh. It was a privilege.
Right. Thank you, Kishore. Stay well, stay healthy then. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Stay healthy.
Yeah.